Hello and welcome back, future scientists. I'm Mr. K with Mississippi Public Broadcasting, and I've got another great lesson today. Last time we were talking about macromolecules. Today we're changing it up a little bit, and we're talking about monomers and polymers, which makes me ask the question, what are they? So let's go ahead and take a closer look at that. So monomers and polymers. Let's remember that mono in monomers means one, and poly in polymer means many, okay? So each macromolecule is made up of smaller organic molecules. These smaller molecules are known as monomers. Monomers are covalently bonded together to create large polymer molecules. So one molecule, one small organic molecule is a monomer, and then a lot of them put together is a polymer. Here's another way to look at it, okay? Polymers are made up of many small repeating molecular units known as monomers. So here's an example that might help you kind of wrap your head around it. Imagine a brick house, okay? A brick house is made up of a lot of small individual units called bricks. So in this example, the brick house is the polymer because it's made up of a lot of smaller units, which are the bricks, which in this example are the monomers, okay? Monomers come together to build a bigger unit known as a polymer, okay? So let's take a closer look at this slide. Monomers are the smaller building blocks that come together to form larger molecules. So take a look at that picture there, okay? Each of those little squares, right, those small little blue squares would be monomers, but they're coming together to build a bigger structure, and that dark blue square that's made up of a lot of the smaller ones would be the polymer. So each little square is a monomer, and the big square is a polymer, right? Monomers come together to make polymers. Okay, so what are polymers? Polymers are large organic compounds made of small parts known as monomers. So let's take a look at this picture. If this whole structure is a polymer, what are the monomers here, right? Well, each little circle, each of those colored circles would be a monomer, and this whole unit that we're looking at here would be the polymer, okay? Monomers are small, polymers are big, right? So the reason we're talking about this is that macromolecules also have monomers and polymers. They've got small units and they've got big units, and we need to know the examples of each one. So let's try to go ahead and talk about that here in a little bit. First, I wanted to talk about how do we make these monomers stick together and how do we break them apart? Well, one process we'll use, this is a chemical reaction called a dehydration synthesis. Okay, there's a lot in the name here that tells you what's going on. First of all, what does, if I asked you to synthesize something, what would I be asking you to do? I'm asking you to make something. To synthesize means to make. Okay, well, what about dehydration? That one's kind of easier. If you're dehydrated, what are you missing? You don't have any water, right? That's what dehydration means. Well, dehydration synthesis is a way that we can make a polymer. We can fuse together a lot of monomers to make a polymer. How we do this is that we're going to suck the water out of monomers, and that's going to force them to join together, okay? This is just kind of a quick overview of this process. You'll read and do a lot more studying on this in your class, but this is just kind of an overview. What we really want to know here, dehydration synthesis, making something by taking the water out of it. This is how we can take monomers and join them together to make a polymer, okay? It's all in the name. Here's the opposite of that reaction. It's called hydrolysis. You might remember from our first unit, lysis means to split or to rupture or to explode. So if something is lysing, it's usually breaking apart. What we're doing here in hydrolysis, this is how you can take a big polymer and break it into smaller monomers by inserting water into it. So let's take a look at that word a little bit more. Hydrolysis, right? Lysis means to split, and when you hear the word hydro, that makes you think of water. So hydrolysis is literally splitting something with water, okay? That's what hydrolysis means. That's how you can take a big unit and make it into smaller units. Okay, So those are a couple of different chemical reactions on how to split and put these together. What I wanted to talk about now are the polymers and monomers of the different macromolecules, what they mean, and some examples of each one. So macromolecules are made of polymers, which are made of smaller repeating parts called monomers. What are the monomers for each macromolecule? Let's talk about carbohydrates first, okay? So for carbohydrates, the monomer is a monosaccharide. They have the same prefix, mono, because let's look at the word monosaccharide. That second part of the word saccharide means sugar. So this is one sugar, and that is the monomer for carbohydrates. If I get a lot of monosaccharides together, then I would make the polymer. What's the polymer of a carbohydrate? Is a polysaccharide. Remember that prefix poly means many. So a polysaccharide is many sugars, okay? And that is the polymer of a carbohydrate. To me, carbohydrates are kind of easy to remember for this because the prefixes are the same. The monomer of a carbohydrate is a monosaccharide. The polymer of a carbohydrate is a polysaccharide. The prefixes are lining up, okay? Let's go to proteins. So what are proteins made up of? Proteins are made up of amino acids. So amino acids are the monomers of proteins. When you get a lot of amino acids together and fuse them, you're going to make a protein. So what is the polymer of a protein? A lot of times people will just say protein. So protein is the polymer for a protein. Another word you'll hear sometime though is a polypeptide. Okay, a polypeptide. Well, same thing's going on here, that we have the same prefixes for both of these words. The polymer of a protein is a polysaccharide, poly for both of them. Let's talk about polypeptide a little bit, and then I'll move to nucleic acids. So why are they called polypeptides? Well, amino acids are fused together with a special type of bond called a peptide bond. So if you have a lot of amino acids that are fused together, in between each amino acid would be a peptide bond, and so they just call the whole macromolecule a polypeptide. Now I do want to clarify this, and I'll get into this in more detail later on. A polypeptide and a protein are not exactly the same thing. A polypeptide is what you get before you're done making the protein. But they're just called that because, again, the amino acids are bonded together with a peptide bond, so a lot of peptide bonds is called a polypeptide. Okay, let's go to nucleic acids. So what is the polymer of a nucleic acid? It is a nucleic acid. A couple of examples of this would be DNA and RNA, and both of those have nucleic acids in the name. So DNA is deoxyribonucleic acid. RNA is ribonucleic acid. So those are the polymers of nucleic acids. The monomers for nucleic acids are called nucleotides. So what's the monomer of a nucleic acid? It's a nucleotide. And to me, nucleic acid and nucleotide kind of sound alike, so that's an easy way to remember that they go together. Okay? Lastly, we'll talk about lipids. Lipids are not considered true polymers, and they don't technically have any true monomers, but what we do want to know is that lipids are made up of smaller units called fatty acids and glycerol, and they come together to make a lipid. It's more of like a technical thing where they aren't technically considered polymers and monomers, but it is a larger unit that's made up of smaller units, okay? And what are the smaller units for lipids? They're called fatty acids and glycerol. And what are lipids? They're just fats. So that's easy to remember that fatty acids and lipids go together, okay? Great, so this is what we're going to end on for this. So really appreciate y'all hanging in there with me. I just need your attention for like one more minute, and then I'll get y'all out of here, okay? So I wanted to talk about the caloric value for these macromolecules. Again, a lot of what you're eating is going to end up using as fuel to run your body, okay? And each of the macromolecules have a different caloric value. So proteins, for every 1 gram of protein you eat, that represents 4 calories from your diet, okay? Carbohydrates are the same way. For every 1 gram of carbohydrates you eat, that's 4 calories, okay? Lipids actually have the most calories involved with them. For every gram of fats or lipids that you eat, that represents 9 calories. So that's why we use lipids as a way to store energy, is because they hold so much, okay? They're really good at storing energy because they're really high in their caloric value. Now, I'm looking at proteins and carbohydrates, and I told y'all last time that we mostly use carbohydrates as energy and not proteins. Why is that? They're both worth the same amount of calories, so why don't we just use either one? Well, proteins have a lot of different jobs in your body. They're building your body, they're helping you digest food, they're moving your body around. So much of your body is made up of proteins that we don't want to also give it the job of using it as energy. So we usually use carbohydrates as energy first, and then lipids if we don't have any carbohydrates to burn. And then lastly, the last thing your body will do is start to burn off your proteins, because we want to keep them in the muscles and bones and making up the body to keep you nice and healthy and strong. Okay? So y'all, thank you so much for hanging in there with me today. Your teacher has some other assignments that you're going to get to practice all of this stuff on. Make sure to give it your best effort, and I hope you have a great day.